At the beginning of the film, we see a judge who kills a bug lying on his table with a tissue, and people around him remind him that he is in a courtroom. After that, he gives his verdict in a case in which a man had wronged 16 children, and the mother of one of the children thanks the judge, but he does not accept her gratitude. Then he gets up from his chair and suddenly collapses. We see that the judge was having trouble speaking while giving the verdict. The scene then shifts directly to the care home, where we see Judge Stephen, who was admitted there due to his poor condition. A little while later, we see him in a room where an old man of the same age is video chatting with his grandchildren, and there's a lot of noise. The judge gets very irritated by these sounds and puts up a curtain to block them out. The judge has been at the care home for quite some time, but he hasn't spoken to anyone because he doesn't feel comfortable there at all. He keeps to himself, and in his eyes, all the old people there behave like children, following orders and living under restrictions. The non-elderly staff don't let him adjust to the old people's environment. One day he goes out to the garden in his wheelchair, where an old man is drinking beer and smoking a cigarette. When the old man sees the judge, he offers him a cigarette and beer, and they sit and talk. Then the judge starts walking forward, and an old man approaches from behind. Due to a coughing sound, the beer spills on the judge's clothes, and since he was already smoking, it catches fire. Seeing this, the judge is shocked and calls for help, and we can clearly see fear in his eyes. The next day, we see the judge sleeping in his bed. When he wakes up, he notices a strange old man standing at the door staring at him, who quickly leaves after being seen. Now, you might think this story is simple, just about old people, but that's not the case at all. Stay with the story, because what happens next is very interesting. The next day, singers visit the care home to perform, and the old people are enjoying themselves. However, the judge is extremely bored. Then he looks around and notices the man who was outside his room the previous day. The judge starts watching him, and his eyes fall on an old woman. She approaches him and tells him to stay away from people, saying they're all crazy and act like children. She then talks about herself, saying her family is away but will definitely return. Hearing this, the judge looks at her strangely. Here we see a glimpse of the lives of old people. They don't do much themselves and even need nurses' help to bathe. But the judge believes he's recovered and wants to go home as soon as possible. The doctor explains that he's not fully healed, so they can't let him leave. At the lunch table, the judge doesn't eat anything, and we see the old man again, named David, holding a puppet named Jenny Penn. The nurse asks him to put the puppet away, and in anger, he pulls his hand back. Another old man approaches the judge and talks about a book. The judge doesn't know about the book but listens politely. Then the judge starts feeling pain in his head. A nurse brings him back to reality and asks him to hold a glass. When the judge collapsed earlier, he suffered paralysis, which affected his body, particularly his hand. He tries for a long time but can't grip the glass with that hand, causing him significant pain. At the same time, David is watching TV and laughing loudly at a show. The judge feels like David is mocking him, and in anger, he drops the glass. In the next scene, we see the judge in a bathtub being bathed by a nurse. When she leaves to get a towel, he slips into the water. He starts thrashing to save himself, and when the nurse returns, she quickly rescues him. At night, we see David sitting as if he's about to leave the nursing home. As soon as the time comes, he steps out of his room, but the nurses are still there and take him back, saying David always pretends to leave, but no one comes for him. Nearby, the woman who spoke to the judge about her family is sitting. David whispers something in her ear, causing her to cry, and he walks away without caring. Back in his room, the judge wakes up to a sound and looks around. He sees David, who looks creepy, and throws a bottle of urine near the judge's private parts. Soon, the nurse and doctor arrive, and the judge tries to explain what happened, but they misunderstand and blame him. The judge tells Tony, another president, that he saw everything, but with David present, Tony is too scared to speak. You might wonder why David did this, but we'll find out soon. The next day at lunch, the judge watches David. After lunch, he tries to confront David, but David calls him stupid and angrily says, "I'll come to meet you at night." Now, a terrifying story begins in the nursing home. As night falls, David leaves his room and starts harassing the old people. He scares some with his puppet and physically hurts others. At night, we see a chamber on fire. At 3 a.m., the judge wakes up to a sound and sees David scaring him with cotton pieces and his puppet. David removes the curtain, approaches Tony, and holds the puppet close to Tony's face, asking, "Who rules here?" Tony, terrified, says, "Jenny Penn." Then David does something disgusting. He tells Tony to lick the puppet's backside, and Tony complies out of fear. David rings the judge's bell, but no one comes. Even after getting his way, David hurts Tony's private parts severely. The judge tries to stop him, but David threatens him, saying to let him do what he wants or face consequences. Tony, crying, reveals that David does this every night and has caused many deaths. Meanwhile, David takes items from everyone's rooms and heads back to his own. Hearing a sound, he looks into a room and sees an old man on the floor begging for help, but David closes the door and leaves. In the next scene, we see the old people dancing while the judge sits quietly. David starts dancing, but it's more about harassing others, stepping on their feet or pushing them. Eventually, he takes center stage. stage. The doctor asks David about an incident with the judge, but David refuses to talk, claiming his mental state isn't right. The next day, college students visit Tony for an interview. David watches from the side, making Tony uncomfortable, but he completes the interview. Afterward, Tony runs to the laundry room to hide. The judge follows and asks Tony to join him to escape. But Tony, scared, refuses. On his way out, the judge sees hospital photos, and David is in every one, even from when the hospital was built. The judge complains to the doctor about David, but the doctor takes him to his room and says David saw him doing something wrong. They search the room and find a woman's garment in poor condition under the bed, shocking the judge as no one believes him. At night, David roams freely, having been at the hospital for so long. The judge, already unwilling to stay, feels even worse. At breakfast, David blackmails an old woman sitting across from the judge, saying only his rules apply and she must obey. The judge insults David, who kicks his leg hard, and mentions another old man, Sonny, who defied him and can't move a finger now. He warns the judge to stay out of his way. Unable to tolerate this, the judge throws items from the table and the nurses take him away. The next day, the doctor checks the judge's mental health. Meanwhile, David continues bullying Tony and the judge, especially Tony, pulling his urine bag and causing pain. David tries to impose rules on the judge, who refuses. In anger, David spits on him and leaves. He sees the old woman who wanted to join her family, lies that her family is waiting, takes her outside and leaves her at the gate. Later, he realizes his cards were swapped, rushes out, and finds the woman dead after falling into water. By now, we've seen 2 deaths, and who knows how many elderly people David has killed before. The judge checks the gate and confirms the woman didn't leave on her own. David is a devil in the nursing home, tormenting the elderly day and night. The judge's mental health worsens with strange hallucinations. He talks randomly or goes silent. David continues bullying, targeting others when he can't get to the judge. Another death occurs, shocking the judge. He makes a plan and steals a nurse's room card. While the nurse takes David for a shower, the judge searches David's room. When David returns, he realizes someone was there, gets furious, and storms out. He plays a song, throws the stolen key at the judge, which had fallen from his pocket, and starts dancing. His breathing becomes labored due to asthma. He pulls out his inhaler, but it's empty. We see a flashback where the judge emptied the inhaler while in David's room. David rushes back, finds all his inhalers empty, begs for his life, crawls out and collapses. In the judge's room, Tony sleeps peacefully. The judge puts the bell away. In the morning, the judge and Tony look for David, but he's gone. In the evening, everyone watches a movie and Tony says good days are coming. The judge gets up to go to his room but feels someone taking him somewhere. It's David, who survived, and pushes him into a room, causing him to fall. David turns up a radio and manipulates a woman, trying to undress her. The judge protests, gathers strength, and hits David with his handbelt, knocking him down. Nurses and doctors arrive after hearing the noise. In the next scene, the judge is alone in a large room in poor condition. Days pass, and he goes outside, but David remains a nightmare for everyone. At night, David enters the judge's room and recounts being 40, mopping a hall during a ceremony where people celebrated the judge. David, envious, says only his rules apply here, not the judge's court. He makes the judge lick his puppet's wrist, and David is thrilled. Days pass, and everyone is fed up with David. The judge is broken. At lunch, Tony sits with him and says he wants to help because the judge was strong. Tony performs a Mexican dance in front of David, angering him. In the evening, everyone is in the lobby with music playing. David glares at Tony, who sits down. Furious, David goes to Tony's room, but Tony isn't there. In the laundry room, someone attacks David from behind. The judge grabs his hand, stuffs a cloth in his mouth, and David dies. After a few days, the elders start living in peace due to David's departure. The film ends here. Friends, this was the story of the film, which shows that bullying does not happen only with children, but also with the elderly. Tell us in the comments how you liked this film. If you are new to the channel, then subscribe and press the bell icon for notifications. Don't forget to like and share the video.